Hey, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. Subscribe to Saturday Down South on YouTube. I'm Connor O'Gara. No Will today. Unfortunately, his uncle died, and he is with his family this week. So hope Will is doing all right. Hope the whole family is dealing with this difficult time together, and he finds some peace in this. So Will be off this pod, but he should be back for the recap pod on Sunday to go through everything that happens in Rivalry Week. Yeah, plan for today, Rivalry Week. In case you forgot about it, we got a whole lot of games to get to. We have 10 games to get to. I got 15 pages of notes sitting right here to get you ready, to get you through this weird, funky week. Hopefully this will provide you enough content as you're driving to your Thanksgiving destination, flying to whatever the case may be. We've got Jim Dunaway coming up in a bit to talk all things Iron Bowl, and then we will send you on your Thanksgiving way with some Lad of the Week. But first, just as we've been doing for the last few months, a quick word from our friends at Dabble. We've got just a great time on the sports calendar. I mean, I don't know if this is the number one time, but it's certainly in the discussion for the best time on the college football calendar. It is definitely my favorite time on the sports calendar in general. So we have tons of sports that are going on. And if you are one of these people that's like, oh, daily fantasy, I'm trying to get into that, Dabble is the place to do it. It's one of the newest and best apps in the DFS space. They've wasted no time making a name for themselves. The social function, it is second to none. They offer a wide variety of sports making picks, which again, we've got a lot of sports going on right now, college football, NFL, NBA, you name it, they've got it. Use promo code SDS2 when you sign up today. Receive $25 in bonus cash. No deposit required. Again, that is promo code SDS2 for $25 in bonus cash, courtesy of the good folks at Dabble. All right, let's start off with the Egg Bowl, which not sure if you've heard. Going to be a couple of eyeballs on this one. Number 7, Ole Miss, 7.5 point favorites against Mississippi State. The over-under I have for this one is 1 animated graphic of Lane Kiffin in Florida gear, LSU gear, and Ole Miss gear. It'll be one of those probably sitting at a recruiting table or something like that, and he gets to pick the hats, do something like that. That graphic will be ready. Announcements. We are getting an announcement apparently from Lane Kiffin's camp, from Keith Carter, maybe? I don't know. A day after this game is being played, Saturday morning is the expectation. Wouldn't surprise me if this trickled out by Friday night. I mean, like, let's be honest here. Seem to be a lot of people reporting a lot of different things. You've got 3 fan bases that are very eager to find this information out. Wouldn't surprise me if by the time head hits pillow on Friday night, we know exactly where Lane Kiffin is ending up, and it'll just be a matter of making it official on Saturday. If he leaves Ole Miss, it'll be the college football version of the decision. And not just that he'd be leaving, but that he'd be making a spectacle of leaving. And that was what always rubbed Cleveland Cavaliers fans the wrong way with all of that, was that they had this build up, and instead of turning into this triumphant return to Cleveland, it turns into what it became. And, you know, Ole Miss fans can feel both grateful and kind of jaded that this is the way that this has all gone down. If Lane stays at Ole Miss, though, it'll be the biggest I'm coming back announcement in college football probably since Tebow after the 08 title. You know, not a whole lot of announcements that would carry that type of weight. Those are the stakes, though. Those really are the stakes. And this is a huge, huge moment for the next 5 to 10 years of the SEC. I mean, it really is. Lane insists that he's going to be locked into the Egg Bowl. Trinidad Chambliss insists that this team is locked in for all things Egg Bowl. There will be no distractions, even with all the outside noise about Lane's future. I kind of love that he said that. I really do. I also think that it's one of those things that's easier to say now, as opposed to if things aren't necessarily going well on the road. You've got the cowbells rocking, because that's going to be obviously an extremely charged atmosphere, knowing that Mississippi State can kind of do the funniest thing ever to its rival, all while clinching its first bowl berth of the post-Mike Leach era. All those things will be factored into this one, and it's going to be a hostile atmosphere. What's troubling from that sense is that as much as you'd like to say, well, the juice, that's going to win out in this one, and Ole Miss is really going to be in trouble, if we're actually just trying to be as present as possible, as Ole Miss insists it will be for this one, This is a really bad matchup for Mississippi State. Really bad. I mean, there is one team that has been phenomenal at closing out games and one team that has not been. The team that's been phenomenal has been Ole Miss, specifically Kewan Lacey, aka the guy that just became the first player in program history to be named a finalist for the Doak Walker Award, Jeremiah Love. Also an Ahmad Hardy finalist for that. Seemed pretty obvious, but he's got 84 rushing attempts and 21 first down conversions in those spots when Ole Miss is leading by 1 to 7 points. Those are both best in FBS. He also leads power conference running backs with 84 missed tackles forced, which seems really problematic against the Mississippi State defense that's up to 123 missed tackles this year after allowing 300 rushing yards in consecutive weeks. We've talked about that a lot because it's very well documented how much this group has struggled to defend the run. And if this is a game in which Ole Miss is up by a touchdown late, very different feel than last year, where last year they're kind of like, what are we going to do? We're going to put J.J. Pegues in there to convert on 4th and 1. Let's just hope Jackson Dart makes the right decision. No, you can just kind of trust that you have a back that even if everybody in the building knows he's getting the football, he's going to be able to get those tough yards for you. Kewan Lacey has been that. He has been everything as advertised and more. I'm saying that Lane is able to block out the noise for this one, and he gets a hard-fought 27-17 victory to lock up a home playoff game, which maybe that kind of seemed a little bit less imminent with the switch in the rankings that we got on Tuesday night with Oregon taking the 6th spot after the USC win. But I still think that that's very much on the table for this Ole Miss team. And I think they're able to win this one. And then all the attention in the world is going to shift to everything that happens after. All right, number 4, Georgia, 13.5-point favorites against number 23, Georgia Tech. This game being played in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Yes, I know we're upset about it. The over-under I have for this one is 8 overtimes. That's what we got last year. I remember last year I'm watching this game, and I think it was in the eighth overtime when this happened. And it was 12:15 or something local time. And the local ABC, they all of a sudden go to a rocket launching at the same time. And we have to watch because we're here in Orlando. You know, it's all of a sudden you have the bigger part of the screen. It's like a picture-in-picture situation. And the bigger part, the much, much bigger part of the screen is this rocket launching. And instead, George is just kind of quietly winning this game in the 8th overtime. Hope that I was in the minority experiencing that. But I know that, you know, in the state of Florida, there were others that were in that same spot. Anyway, this year, probably not going to be 8 overtimes. Probably not. This is actually the most lopsided SEC spread of the weekend, if you can believe it. And that's wild considering that Brent Key's teams have played Georgia really tough. 1-score games in the 4th quarter the last 2 years. And the game a few years ago was a lot closer than people care to remember. And then Georgia kind of ran away with it middle of the 3rd quarter. Obviously last year, this game, the way that it played out with Georgia falling behind 17-0 at halftime, had everybody just kind of going, what in the world is Georgia at this point? And they were able to come back, and Carson Beck was much better down the stretch. That's when we got this infamous clip of Tate Ratledge kind of shaking Carson Beck into shape and be like, man, you got to figure this out right now or else we're cooked. Different vibe with these two teams this year. Georgia Tech, fresh off the devastating loss to Pitt, doesn't look like a team that can really stop anyone offensively. Georgia, on the other hand, looks like a team that is going to be really difficult for any defense to stop, including Georgia Tech, at least not for 4 quarters. I've been searching for the right Gunnar Stockton stat that shows why he's so Stetson Bennett-like. And maybe I need to stop with that comp, or at least stop until we see Gunnar Stockton win some big-time playoff games. So maybe that's not fair, so I apologize for that. But this is what I come back to. And I was doing some of my Heisman research, and I always value this stat, and I just think it means a lot. In games against teams that are currently ranked in the AP Top 25, as of this very moment, Gunnar Stockton's quarterback rating is 180.4. Among FBS quarterbacks with at least 2 such games against ranked opponents, currently ranked, Ty Simpson is the next closest at 152.5. I ultimately put Stetson on my Heisman ballot in 22 when he had a quarterback rating of 191 against 7 AP top 25 finishers, which is just insane when you consider that Mac Jones, Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, those are the only guys with better marks in the playoff era. I mean, he was so good against quality competition. Gunnar isn't quite on that level yet, and I realize until you have the championship pedigree, he won an SEC championship by coming in, but you get what I'm saying. Until you have that type of national championship pedigree, you're not going to be viewed in the same light. But it's worth noting that his 3 best games this year at Tennessee, against Ole Miss, against Texas, the Bama performance probably looks a whole lot different too if a true freshman holds on to a walk-in touchdown that would have erased a 21-0 deficit. But, we don't need to relitigate that. With that in mind, that's why the spread is what it is, with this being nearly 2 touchdowns in favor of Georgia. If Georgia Tech is a team that looks like it peaked too early, and Georgia is the team that looks like it's peaking now at the exact right time, why go against that? You know what I mean? As much as I want to give respect to what Brent Key has built, and as much as there could be that possibility that Georgia's in a dogfight and Haynes King is doing very Haynes King things, I just come back to this. Like, if Pitt can beat Georgia Tech by 2 touchdowns in Bobby Dodd, Georgia can do the same at Mercedes-Benz. So out of respect for Brent Key, I'll say that it's only a 17-point game, but I'm going to go Georgia to win this one 38-21. All right, number 3, Texas A&M, 2.5-point favorite against number 16, Texas. The over-under I have is 0.5 Texas A&M offensive touchdowns. Yeah. So I need to say this, and this isn't going to be the stat that A&M fans want to hear as they're traveling for Thanksgiving or maybe just preparing for this game on Friday night, which I just cannot wait for. I'm so excited to see these 2 teams battled out. A&M hasn't had an offensive touchdown against Texas since 2011. Ryan Tannehill delivered Texas A&M its last offensive touchdown against Texas. Also of note, Ryan Tannehill is 37 years old. Also of note, they've only played once since he left A&M. It was last year when A&M's only touchdown in this game was an offensive, and it was the 93-yard pick 6 from Will Lee. Both the A&M offense and the Texas defense in very, very different spots now compared to where they were last year. This year, the A&M offense, it's averaging 34.8 points per power conference game if you take away the non-offensive scores, which I always say you should take away the non-offensive scores. That's the best in the SEC because if you do that for Tennessee, that number drops to 33.4 against power conference competition. I'm saying for my money, A&M has been the best offense in the SEC. I definitely thought for the entire offseason, a good chunk of the regular season, that Texas was going to have the best defense in the SEC. That has not been the case. Not been the case at all. Some of the raw numbers are still okay. Top 30 in scoring defense, top 30 in yards per play allowed. That's fine. But 4 consecutive games for Texas allowing at least 31 points. That's wild. Last year, Texas only did that once. And it was the double overtime Peach Bowl against Arizona State, who had 24 in regulation. So very different. And I think a few things are to blame for that. Not having your 2 best defensive players healthy at the same time is hurt. First, it was Michael Taft, then it was Anthony Hill Jr. Secondary's been banged up at different points. But one of the best assets that the Texas defense had last year was that it could run the ball. More times than not, it could run the ball very, very well as long as Georgia wasn't on the other sideline. That team played complementary football. This team does not at all. And it's perhaps why it looks so disjointed at various points and why they need to have these furious comebacks or they're playing in games that are way too close down the stretch. Backfield has been banged up this year. The offensive line isn't particularly good. It's not necessarily surprising when you consider those factors that Texas has not hit 4 yards per carry once in SEC play. They showed the graphic during the Georgia game, and like these ground game numbers that Sark's going to end up with, they're going to be the worst I think that he's had as a head coach, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close. They just can't finish drives the way that Sark would want to. Haven't had multiple rushing scores in a game since Sam Houston State back in week 4 when Arch is standing over the top of that dude. Been held to 100 rushing yards or less all but once in SEC play. That's not Texas under Sark. That has not been the case. Couldn't even hit the century mark against Arkansas, who ranks outside the top 100 in FBS against the run. I know I said the other day on the recap pod that Texas was going to find a way to pull out its best game of the year, and all of a sudden people are going to be like, see, you got to put Texas in the playoff. Even though they got 3 losses, just consider them. You know, they beat, as Sark would like to tell you, they beat 3 teams that were in the top 10 at the time of the matchup. Haven't, you know, a team hasn't done that in the 2020s. I'm bailing on that take. The more I think about it, the more I just go, you know what? I can't rely on Texas to do anything anymore. Why would I rely on them to just all of a sudden have an aberration type game? Because that's what it would be to beat Texas A&M. It really would. You can say, oh, well, they beat this top 10 team. They beat that top 10 team. A&M's more battle tested. They are. And I realize A&M has had the very favorable conference schedule. They've had 7 of 8 bottom teams in the SEC that they've gotten to play in conference so far. They basically have the conference schedule that Indiana got last year. I realize that's benefited them. They also still went on the road and won in South Bend. So let's not pretend like that just was nothing. But, you know, even though Arch looked better in the latter half of the season overall, I still saw what it looked like against Georgia. He had a couple nice throws, 1 or 2 nice drives, the arm angle to Ryan Wingo in the end zone. That's good. That'll play. The rest of that game, not so much. I don't trust the Texas offensive line to hold up against Cassius Howell, that Texas A&M defensive front, which has had multiple weeks, I think, to prepare for this one. No disrespect to Samford, but some disrespect to Samford. Look, I think they can get after the passer. I think they're going to live in the backfield. They might not be elite against the run. They have some run fit issues that will probably be questions come college football playoff time, maybe come SEC championship time. So I think there's a world in which Sark dials up a lot of these quick hitting passes to the outside. That's always kind of a staple of the Texas offense. Try and get these guys on the edges, try and trust your receivers to be able to block in space and just get chunk plays that way, especially when you can't run the football. You really need to rely on that. Texas will try and rely on that in this one, but I think Mike Elko knows that going in. I think Mike Elko makes some of those adjustments, and I'm going to take A&M to win this one. I think they end the Texas misery. Not only do they score their first offensive touchdown against Texas since 2011, but they score a whole lot of them. They win this one on Friday night, 31-28. Also, if A&M gets to 12-0, I think that would be worthy of a first-round bye regardless of what happens in the SEC championship. And maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but like for all the talk about the favorable draw that A&M got in conference play, which was really, really favorable, getting to 12-0 with 4 true road wins against power conference bowl teams would be something. It definitely would be. And I just don't think Georgia being idle or Texas Tech beating BYU again in the Big 12 championship, I don't think that would be worthy of jumping 12-1 Texas A&M that in this scenario would like lose to Bama in the SEC championship. So I want that to be kept in mind because I would argue that if A&M wins this game, we're talking first round playoff bye. I really think that would be the case, but I guess I'll save that argument just in case that situation presents itself. Clemson, South Carolina 2.5-point favorites for this one. The over-under I have is 18 missed tackles forced from Lenore Sellers. I loved this stat last year from Max Chadwick. This game was one of those where if you just saw the box score and you saw the things that were being said about Lenore Sellers afterwards, you probably would have been like, wait a minute, what? Those two things don't really add up. This wasn't exactly a shootout, but the way that South Carolina had to win this one with the things that Sellers did, it fueled a lot of the offseason discussion. And it's not to say it was just based on this game. It absolutely wasn't. The latter half of last season, what he did was everything for Lenore Sellers. But man, this game was just chef's kiss in every way. Most missed tackles forced in a game by a quarterback since PFF started tracking that back in 2014. He had the most of any player in college football last year, except for Ashton Genty, as in like the Heisman runner-up running back. He's the only guy who had more missed tackles forced in a game. Lenore Sellers against Clemson last year hit 176 rushing yards after first contact. Just for a little perspective here, Ahmad Hardy had the 300-yard rushing game a couple weeks ago against Mississippi State. He only had 141 rushing yards after first contact in that one. Yeah, nightmares. I bet Clemson had those Clemson defenders thinking about all the things that Lenore Sellers did on that day last year. Then again, maybe they didn't, because when you play in the ACC, it means that you still have a shot to make the playoff, even if you go 0-2 against the SEC in the regular season, then you just lose to another SEC team in the playoff. Anyway, neither of these teams lived up to preseason playoff aspirations, and it's very disappointing to think about where we thought these teams could be, what they could be playing for when we were talking about this game in August, and to think, man, it's just been a rough go in every possible way, and it's been disastrous seasons. Fan base is upset with their coaches and just wanting to kind of turn the page. But, even though Clemson isn't going to sniff ACC championship consideration, you still wonder, do they care about this one? And South Carolina, we know they're not going to a bowl game. You wonder, what's the motivation going to be like for this? And I'm going to be 100% honest here, guys. I try and watch as much of this stuff as possible. I really do. I don't go to games every single Saturday just because I love being able to just turn on multi-view and watch as many of these teams as possible. If there's a player that I want to watch, if there's a team I want to watch, I am now at that point where I want to try and consume like 12 games in a given day. Clemson has not made the multi-view cut a ton in the latter half of the season. Okay. Haven't prioritized it in the way that I did during the first half of the season, when at first it's like, oh, they're going to compete for a national championship, and then they're a car accident that you can't look away from. When you're a 4-loss ACC team before Halloween, sorry, you've lost my interest a little bit. And honestly, South Carolina has only had my interest because of what it looks like when Sellers is right, and there's still always that possibility that he can do something insane, like he was in the first half of the A&M game when Mike Furry, the interim OC, he looks like he had him comfortable and confident. Different story in the second half, of course. Going to be difficult for this South Carolina offensive line to hold up against a Clemson defensive line that still has a couple of first-round guys on it, with Parker, with Woods. Still have a lot of talent there. Sellers has been sacked 20 times without being blitzed. When I saw that number on PFF, I was like, that seems really, really high. And you know what? It is. Most of any power conference quarterback. Sacks are a quarterback stat. They are. Sellers has a 21.5 pressure to sack ratio when he is not blitzed. That is not great. Not as bad as Jackson Arnold at 36.2% pressure to sack ratio when not blitzed. That's still pretty stunning. But you get it. As hard as it can be sometimes for Sellers to go down, he's still going down far too often without defensive coordinators even needing to do anything crazy. It's not like they need these exotic blitz packages to throw at him. And this South Carolina offense has just been too easy to contain. I will say this. This might sound like putting lipstick on a pig, but I think it's worth mentioning in what will be South Carolina's last game of this season to forget. Shane Beamer's come under a lot of heat, and understandably so. You return All-American candidates at arguably the most important position on offense, the most important position on defense with Dylan Stewart. But, including Nick Harbor, who's been banged up, he was banged up in the A&M game, all three South Carolina superstars are expected to play in this one. Someone just got upset that I called Nick Harbor a superstar. Fine, household name. There are a lot of programs where that would not be the case. And these guys would be sitting, they'd be thinking about the next step. I don't know how many of those three guys are coming back to South Carolina next year. So appreciate them one more time on Saturday. I will try and appreciate them one more time on Saturday, and not knowing what their future holds. I'll also say that for whatever reason, I think Clemson kind of continues its dominance at Williams-Brice. Clemson's won the Palmetto Bowl, which I don't even really feel comfortable calling it that, but whatever. They've won it each of the last 5 times that this game has been played at South Carolina. Spurrier's the last South Carolina coach to beat Clemson in Williams-Brice. I'm going to say that Clemson finally ends the SEC losing streak at 4. Clemson wins outright 24-17. Kentucky, Louisville. The over-under I have is 1 awkward handshake between Vince Marrow and Mark Stoops. We got to get it. I hope we get it. Not even like I can't have the side by side of those two. I need those like where they're very far apart, but they're doing the camera side by side to make it look like they're next to each other, even though they're not. If you recall, Vince Marrow was Stoops' right hand man, longtime best buddy. Left Kentucky for Louisville in June. Took a newly created GM role on the Jeff Brom staff. Just a savage move because nobody goes directly from Kentucky to Louisville or vice versa. And we end up seeing Vince Marrow take this GM role, which is not an on-field role, which means that there's no poach fee that Louisville has to fork over to Kentucky. And maybe that means because he's not technically in an on-field role that we're not going to actually see him on the field. I bet you still will, though. I bet you still will for this one. For those who know, like Big Dom with the Eagles, that's kind of Vince Marrow, what he was at Kentucky and maybe what he is at Louisville. This, in many ways, is the Marrow Bowl. I'd love to know if Mitch Barnhart is the Kentucky AD, if he's weighing the results of this game when it comes to making that $37 million decision with Mark Stoops. I know I've said this a lot on preview pods, so apologies. I've been very, very wrong and be like, oh, if Stoops loses this game, will they actually pull the plug on it? But we can actually lay this out for real now because a loss means that Kentucky isn't going to a bowl game and that the season would be over. A win means that you'd be going to a bowl game and you still, would have 4 wins in your last 5 games to close the season, perhaps with a little bit of promise, knowing that Cutter Boley has apparently already told Mark Stoops that he's not going anywhere. But you have to make a decision after this game. You're not just going to be like, oh, let's let the bowl game play out and then we'll decide. No, you're making that decision. If you're making that decision based on this game, I think that's more of an indictment on Mitch Barnhart than it is Mark Stoops. Because what would that really prove? That Stoops still has his fastball. He hasn't lost at Louisville since 2014. Lamar Jackson was a senior in high school. Okay. You win there and you beat a Louisville team that's been super herky-jerky this year. What does that really show? Because 2 years ago, you won there against a better Louisville team. You had this comeback, this big emotional comeback, and then you go through this emotional roller coaster of thinking, oh, Stoops is off to A&M. He's going to win this big-time game, and then he's going to leave. And then he comes back, and you welcome him back with open arms. Stoops isn't resigning. He's still motivated. And when you have this $37 million that you can get within 60 days, of course, you're not resigning. You're going to wait and accept that check if ultimately your boss decides that he wants to move on. So I don't even necessarily blame Stoops for that. For those being like, oh, he should be classy and step down. Make him. What's the point if you're sitting there knowing that money is coming your way? I think Kentucky is going to win this game because as bad as the Vandy game was, pretty much in all facets, I didn't even talk about Zach Calzada briefly coming in and reminding us that there has just not been $1.2 million spent worse than on Zach Calzada to play tackle football this year. But as bad as that game was, Louisville's been kind of worse lately than Kentucky, man. They went from a team with playoff life heading into the second Saturday of November to then losing 3 straight, including a 32-point loss to SMU. I say Louisville loses 4 in a row. Kentucky wins 28-27 on a walk-off field goal. Don't know how they're going to get to 25. They win on a walk-off field goal. LSU, number 8, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a 10-point favorite. The over-under I have is 4 touchdowns scored in this game. Guys, the actual over-under on this one is 36.5 points. That is an Iowa number. This is going to feel like an Iowa football game. When you score 13 points against Western Kentucky and you haven't scored more than 25 points against FBS competition this year, you're Iowa. LSU, you are Iowa. You officially are. And then you factor in the fact that this is for LSU a road trip to face a defense that's top 6 in the country in both scoring defense and yards per play allowed. Not a great offensive projection for the Bayou Bengals for this one. LSU is averaging 1.5 touchdowns in its 4 true road games this season, averaging 81 rushing yards in those games. And obviously, Oklahoma's offense hasn't exactly been clicking on all cylinders either. 4 wins this year when scoring 24 points or less. That is the Brent Venables way a lot of the time. So what has allowed Oklahoma to get through that? Why are they sitting here in this spot, seemingly 1 win away from clinching a playoff berth and very likely a home playoff game? A couple of things. Isaiah Satania leads the SEC in 20-yard plays from scrimmage. As we saw last week, when you have a guy that could just kind of find that seam and just take it 87 yards to the house, it can allow you to overcome an offense that has a very low success rate at this point. He's got 17 of those 20-yard plays from scrimmage. Last year, Oklahoma's leader in 20-yard scrimmage plays was Jackson Arnold with 7. Yeah. This team did not have anyone with 5 catches of 20 yards. That's almost impossible in this day and age. Oklahoma, during this 3-game winning streak, all against AP top 25 teams, has also only had 2 turnovers. In those 3 games, they won the turnover battle 8-2, plus 6 in turnover margin helps a very limited offensive team beat 3 consecutive ranked teams. LSU is very much not ranked. Very, very much. Turns out the Michael Van Buren experience, pretty similar to the Garrett Nussmeier experience. And we're going to get one more dose of that. LSU isn't winning this game unless it gets a non-offensive score. I think that's the case. They need a scoop and score, pick 6, which definitely don't rule that out with that secondary. Maybe a punt return touchdown, something like that. That's the type of thing where, if it happens, then we can start talking about upset alert. Then we can start talking about OU being in danger of spoiling its playoff chances, because obviously all the pressure is on Oklahoma. I was trying to think of the coaches under the most pressure this weekend, and Kalen DeBoer still takes the cake for me. Obviously, everybody's talking about Ryan Day and overcoming that Michigan losing streak, but Ohio State's already in the college football playoff. So whatever, they lost that game last year and still won a national championship. So I don't really view that in the same sort of light. But Brent Venables is up there. Maybe he's number 3 on that list. Maybe I could even make a case he's number 2 for coaches with the most pressure, because you cannot get through the gauntlet that Oklahoma has gotten through this year and then lose at home to an interim coach with a 4-loss team. You just can't do that. You can't do that to ruin your playoff chances. That will be the type of thing that your new boss, whoever that is, looks at and goes, man, are we ever going to get over the hump? Because you just can't have a floor that low. But I don't feel like that'll be the case. LSU already got its senior day. This is going to be senior day for Oklahoma. Make of that what you will. But it's an empty the tank game for John Mateer with his legs. Heavy dose of John Mateer runs in this one. Make LSU defend a mobile quarterback. That's kind of been the Achilles heel of the Blake Baker defense. Oklahoma wins an ugly game, 21-10, to all but lock in that home playoff game. Number 14, Vandy. Number 19, Tennessee. Tennessee is a 3-point favorite in this one. The over-under I have is 25 camera shots of Diego Pavia's mom. We get it. Okay? Everybody now understands it. We get what's going on here. Let's move on. What else is going on? Vandy trying to win, have the rest of the college football world crumble, and that's basically the only way that Vandy's getting into the playoff. Hear me out here. This might go against conventional modern college football fan thinking, and I realize that the position that I am in is very different from someone that lives and breathes this on the Vandy side. And there are plenty of people that do that. Trust me. Vandy fans more online than people realize. So I don't want to tell you how to feel, but just kind of hear me out with this. Watch this game without thinking about the playoff. Seriously. Don't scoreboard watch. Don't do any of that stuff. Just watch this game and have it fully locked in on what Vandy can actually control. Because at this point, there is so much outside of this that is just beyond what you can control. You're at 14 right now in the playoff rankings. Jumping probably 4 spots is going to be darn near impossible with how these matchups now look for teams that are ranked ahead of Vandy. And if chalk plays out with teams like BYU and Miami, Utah, even Alabama, who, by the way, would still have the head-to-head against Vandy, you're going to know well before Selection Sunday that your team isn't going to the playoff. And that sucks for a 10-2 team. It really does. Because I thought going into this 12-team playoff, 10-2 would be the benchmark. It would be get to 10-2 and you're going to be safe. And instead, that has just not been the case for all of these power conference teams. Like, I think there's a pretty decent chance that there's going to be maybe 5 power conference teams who are going to win 10 games and get left out of the college football playoff this year. Last year, that number was 2. And yet most of the complaining came from the 9-3 teams who got left out, which now, like, 9-3 teams, I mean, get out of here. You're not even sniffing the table. You're not even walking. You're not even looking at that playoff building. Vandy cannot control the fact that those wins on their resume haven't held up as well as they could have hoped. So in my opinion, Vandy fans should just pretend that the playoff isn't in the cards and appreciate the other elements of this one. Appreciate the fact that you've got your best quarterback in program history who is desperately trying to get to New York. We'll get a few reminders of that during this game. Appreciate the fact that you've got a 9-win team who has a legitimate shot to take advantage of a porous Tennessee defense. Appreciate the fact that you've got this elite coaching staff that always seems extremely well prepared and is very rarely outcoached, no matter what that talent disparity is. Appreciate all this, because if you win this game, disappointment should not be your first emotion. Okay? If looking around at other scores is like going to impact your mood, just don't. Just don't. If you've got people saying, hey, we've got 3 of these teams that are on upset alert and it's been a crazy weekend in college football, all right, then you can shift your attention to that. But there's a really good chance that that will not be the case. And instead, this will be the only thing that you have to appreciate. Okay? And it won't be worth it to get into this resume debate or that resume debate. The hay's in the barn. Hay's in the barn with all that stuff. I'm really tempted to pick Tennessee here because I do think that when Vandy has seen a quarterback that can kind of sit back there, pick them apart, that's when they've been at their worst. This could be a tough matchup for Vandy, knowing that the Vols are really exceptional when Joey Aguilar is not throwing picks. 4-0 against power conference competition when that doesn't happen, when he doesn't throw an interception. Vandy had the 3 picks against Kentucky, but that was their first game with an interception since the Bama game. Yeah, that was early October, week 6, I want to say. Yeah, week 6. And they had just 1 takeaway in the 4 games before Kentucky. But I'm not betting against Diego Pavia when he's playing at this level. I'm just not. Tennessee doesn't have a win against an FBS bowl team this year. 25-52 is the combined records of the FBS teams that they have beaten this year. Give me Vandy. Give me Vandy to win 38-35 in a shootout. Mizzou, 2.5-point favorites against Arkansas. The over-under I have is 0.5 sideline shots of Arkansas's next coach. We were recording this at what time? 12:25 Eastern time on Wednesday. As of right now, no announcement on Arkansas's next head coach. Would imagine that's coming very, very soon. We know that that will not be Eric Morris. The North Texas coach took the Oklahoma State job after apparently Arkansas was pursuing him. In my opinion, it would have been a little bit too soon to run it back with a head coach with the last name Morris. So kind of disaster averted there for Arkansas. But this is expected to be done very, very soon. Could Ryan Silverfield be the guy, the Memphis head coach? Memphis plays Navy on Thanksgiving. So in theory, he's got Saturday afternoon open. That gets a little bit tougher to have your next Arkansas coach on the sideline if it's Alex Golesh or Kane Womack, both of whom have Saturday games. Matt Campbell, also a Saturday game. Keep that one in mind. There's apparently some real buzz there. And then there's the total wild card of, hey, Connor, Robert Patrick Petrino, he's going to be shown more than 0.5 times on Saturday. No, I think that ship has sailed. I think you all know that ship has sailed. I would guess that Taylor Green starts in this one, but plays with an extremely short leash. I think Bobby P kind of wants to get him a final send-off and not have his last play in an Arkansas uniform be quite possibly the worst interception in human history that we saw before he left with a hamstring injury in the Texas game. So assuming that's the case, I tend to think that the Mizzou defense can get after him a good amount. Mizzou allowed 360 yards of offense just once all year. They're 13th in FBS in yards per play allowed. A little bit up and down against the run, kind of hot and cold. First half against A&M, it's lights out. Second half, they can't stop a nosebleed. That's kind of the only reason why this spread is as low as it is, in my opinion, I thought it would have been closer to like 5 or 6 points. Could definitely see Mike Washington having a big day, kind of lost in the shuffle of this weird, terrible, disastrous Arkansas season with all these close losses, is that he's, exceeded the 1,000-yard mark in that backfield. Maybe Mizzou's limited quarterback situation could be also factored into that spread. Either way, still got Ahmad Hardy, still got Jamal Roberts. I know it's tough sledding against Oklahoma. Arkansas ain't Oklahoma. And for drink, you can kind of empty the tank with Ahmad Hardy, knowing that you've got a month, in theory, before a bowl game. I think he has like one of those 25 carry, 175 yard type days. I'll respect the spread a bit here, and the fact that 3 of Drink's 4 wins in this game have been 1-score games. He's done very, very well against Arkansas. He's won this game 4 or 5 times. Maybe we get some KJ Jackson late that kind of throws Mizzou off a little bit. But I'm going to go 35-31 Tigers. That would hit the over on 7.5 regular season wins for Mizzou, which felt disrespectful at the time. Still feels disrespectful, even though like for multiple games they were down to their third-string quarterback, and they still might hit the over on that. But yeah, I think ultimately Mizzou's able to win this one. Florida State, Florida. Florida's a 1.5-point favorite. The over-under I have is 2 mentions of a vote of confidence. My goodness, Mike Norvell. My goodness. He has not earned a bowl berth, but he has earned a vote of confidence to return to Florida State for 2026, because when you're still on the hook for $58 million, your university desperately needs you to have a pulse. Single weirdest team of college football in 2025, your Florida State Seminoles. Beat Bama in the opener, and then you're looking at the regular season finale in which you're an underdog against a 3-win Florida team as you're trying to clinch a bowl berth. But you basically did the thing that nobody else is doing in college football outside of Wisconsin. You kept the head coach, the underachieving head coach. Statistically, this team is even weirder. Top 30 in scoring offense and scoring defense. Number 15 in the country in yards per play. 24th in yards per play allowed. 7th in third down conversion rate, 45th in red zone touchdown percentage, which is fine. They're -4 in turnover margin on the season, which that's not good, but a team that moves the ball and gets stops should be able to overcome that in theory. But they're terrible on special teams. They're terrible in close games. They just always make that wrong play at the wrong time in a game of inches. You can't have that. They beat Bama by 14 and then proceeded to lose their next 6 games that were decided by 14 or less. That's almost impossible to do. That's really, really hard to do. If it's a tight game, you just can't trust Florida State to find a way. And that's the thing that everybody wants, of course, with a coach that's still owed $58 million is just to not trust him, right? Like that's the goal. You should feel really good about that. You can't even do the thing that you did last year where you gut the coaching staff, because Florida State does a lot of things well. That you'll probably see that in this game, and you'll have moments where you'll go, wait a minute, this team's 5-6? How's that possible? And then they'll, have a punt that sails over the punter's head or something like that, and then goes to the back of the end zone, or they, like run 20 yards backwards on a punt return or something, or fumble a kickoff return. They'll do something stupid. They just do. I don't know. For whatever reason, that has just been the FSU brand this year. And so, yeah, I don't even think, like, outside of a couple of, other, non-coordinator spots, like, I don't really think that they're in for this overhaul with the coaching staff. They'll probably do the typical Mike Norvell thing and get a bunch of new portal guys and just kind of hope that it works out. But in theory, your only real move to get out of situations like this is to fire the head coach, and they're not doing that. So I'm going to say that the weirdest team in college football goes into the swamp and continues to remind us of its weirdness. FSU, I bet, will be, in moments of this game, hot knife through butter. Early, great opening script, maybe even a double-digit lead. Maybe it's 10-0 FSU, and then Florida crawls back. And then Florida just does the thing that it can randomly do at different points. And no, it hasn't been particularly good finishing games, but I don't know. Maybe I'm looking too far into the second half against Tennessee when they actually still showed a pulse instead of losing by 55, which they very well could have. But I'm going to say that we get some Jaden Baugh brilliance in this one. Florida somehow wins 21-17 in a game that it looks up and is like, oh, wait, Florida State outgained us by 150 yards or something like that. Florida ends the 2025 FSU experience, misery experience, and reminds Florida State fans that this is no fun and they are firmly in college football hell. Number 10, Alabama, 6-point favorites against Auburn. The Iron Bowl is going to have an over-under of 5 reminders of Alabama's Jordan-Hare horrors. The funny thing is, in the 2020s, this has been a house of horrors for Auburn, both in the Iron Bowl and just against power conference competition in general. We've talked about that a lot throughout the year. Gravedigger happened the last time Alabama was at Jordan-Hare, and then Bryce Young going 97 yards, winning in 4 overtimes. That happened the time before that. In the post-Gus Malzahn era, Auburn is now 6-15 against power conference competition at Jordan-Hare. This team has 3 such losses this year, even though it didn't allow any of those teams to come into their building and hit 24 points. Auburn is 1-7 in its last 8 power conference home games, and yet it's only a 6-point spread against an Alabama team that right now is plus 190 on FanDuel to win an SEC title, which, by the way, that's what Alabama will play for if it wins this game. Kind of wild, all of those things. And again, I love finding things that you could explain to people that don't follow college football and just have them scratching their head and going, wait, what? That makes no sense. Just tell NFL people about that and you'll get a look of just dumbfoundedness from them. Others will point out that the last time Alabama had a comfortable win at Jordan-Hare was a decade ago, 2015. 3-3 Alabama is in the last 6 games at Jordan-Hare. The total score in those 6 games combined, 167-167. Can't make this stuff up. Really can't. I truly think this is the ultimate fork in the road moment for Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. And we were told that in this day and age of college football, like, you know, a lot of these rivalry games aren't going to mean as much, and blah, blah, blah. This means so much for Kalen DeBoer. And I've been of the belief that he's going to be able to handle the ebbs and flows of this job. But if you lose this one, you obviously undo the Georgia win, the fact that you were the first coach in SEC history to win 4 consecutive games against AP top 25 teams without any buys, extra rest, or anything like that. You lose this game and you're out of the college football playoff. And you're not getting fired, in my opinion, but you're going into year 3 on everybody's hot seat list. And suddenly recruiting gets more difficult. This pressure-packed environment of replacing the GOAT, it just turns into a more hostile atmosphere. And every time moving forward that you're, you know, in a dogfight at home, your fans are just restless, and it's just going to be a very uncomfortable 8 months, obviously, if you lose this game. And that's the case every year in the Iron Bowl, but especially this year with what's at stake on the Alabama side. And look, if you blow your chance at the 12-team playoff again by losing your final 2 games of SEC play, that would just be such a tough pill to swallow in every possible way. It just kind of feels right that these are the circumstances too for Auburn. You've got an interim coach that is trying to get to a bowl game. You've got a team that's looked completely different post Hugh Freeze. Some of that was because it was Mercer. I get that, but they looked very different against Vandy. Like, nothing about what we saw against Vandy was Auburn's identity throughout the Hugh Freeze era. And suddenly the offense in that game was on fire, but the defense couldn't get a stop after it was lights out all year. Cam Coleman has 20 targets the last 2 games without Freeze, most of any 2-game stretch of his career, of course. He's played in 5 games in his career after November 7th. And in those 5 games, he's got 37 catches for 514 yards and 8 touchdowns. Got a touchdown in every one of those 5 games. Would imagine he's going to be making his presence felt against an Alabama secondary that's been mostly good, but it's had some tough moments on the outside. That's going to be a really good matchup. But like every game, it feels like Alabama is going to put it all on Ty Simpson. What is he going to be able to do against pressure? Can Alabama keep him clean? Because when he's been kept clean, that's when he's been at his best. If Auburn can get pressure with 4, that is bad news bears for Alabama. I'm not breaking news by saying that. turnover worthy plays, they go up. That could definitely happen in this one. Could also probably, if you're Auburn, trust that you're going to be able to stop the run with 4. Don't need to have those extra defenders in the box. And Auburn's defensive front, we know it is elite getting into the backfield. 75 TFLs on the year. They're 5th in America in yards per carry allowed. This feels like another game in which Bama gets stuffed with the run a few too many times in the first half. And in the second half, you forget that they even have running backs. They're just like, oh, Daniel Hill, you're still here? Oh, Jam Miller, you're around? Okay, I guess, sure. They'll be used probably maybe more pass protection than actually running the football. But this is what Ty Simpson's built for. FSU happened. Of course, we acknowledge that. His road games since then, the win at Georgia, close game, made big-time plays. The win at Mizzou, close game, made big-time plays. The win at South Carolina, close game, made big-time plays. On 3rd and 4th down in those games, Alabama was a combined 32 for 57. That's 56% in those spots when you're a team that can't run the football. That is really, really good. He's 3rd among power conference quarterbacks with 38 third down conversions in the passing game. He's tied for 4th among power conference quarterbacks with 8 fourth down conversions in the passing game. As we're going to get to with Dunaway, I think when Bama gets in those tight spots, they're not going to mess around with the Connor Talty experience. They're over that. They can say all the nice things publicly. You can have guys that are coming out and saying, "Oh, we support our guy." Like, that's all well and good. That's fine. You're trying to get to the college football playoff. You're not trying to show your kicker that you believe in him by giving him a chance to kick on 4th and 5 from the 36. All right, you don't need to do that. You got Ty Simpson. You got to trust that in these spots. I think they will, and I think ultimately they're going to go. You are going to define our season. Okay, I'm riding with Bama. I am. Drama feels inevitable with this one, but I question the Jordan-Hare magic favoring the home team. I really do. So I'm going to go Bama to win this one 27-23 to move on to the SEC championship. Again, we'll have more with Dunaway, all things Iron Bowl coming up in a second here. But first, my lock of the week. Guys, hate to say I told you so. It was actually more fun when I wasn't hitting a single one of these. It really was. But my Pitt plus 2.5 pick against Georgia Tech was a nice hit. That was a nice hit. I'm going to pat myself on the back for that one. Got me back to 6-7 on the year. We're almost breaking even. I know it's not breaking even if you're 500 in the gambling world, but you get what I'm saying. We're going to get back to 500. That's what we're going to do this week. Iowa, 6-point favorite at Nebraska on Black Friday. One of my favorite Black Friday games. I've been to this one, and it's just points are at a premium. You have. This is going to sound so weird and disgusting, but I swear it just makes sense. Cinnamon rolls and chili. Every single time is the food item of choice in the Nebraska press box for this game. And it sounds so weird, but it's like the most fall thing I've ever consumed. And it just kind of works. I can't say that I've sat here and done that at home. It just doesn't feel right in Central Florida. But there's something about watching this game where it's 38 degrees. Maybe you've got some freezing rain coming down and you're eating cinnamon rolls and chili. That's Nebraska and Iowa. I don't know why, but it's just the way that it is. Nebraska being cursed in this game goes back to Sean Eichhorst, the former Nebraska AD, firing Bo Pelini after beating Iowa and then saying infamously, I had to evaluate where Iowa was. Just the ultimate slap in the face to your manufactured rival. Yes, that's what Iowa was when Nebraska joined the Big Ten. But the only Nebraska coach to beat Iowa in the post-Bo Pelini era, interim coach Mickey Joseph, 2022. That's right. Matt Rule has lost a pair of 13-10 games to Iowa. He also has backup quarterback. He's going to have another backup quarterback. This Dylan Raiola situation doesn't end up going Nebraska's way. He's got a backup quarterback that just lost by 30 at Penn State, who has an interim coach of their own. Not sure if you've heard that. I was there the last time that Nebraska beat Iowa in Lincoln, 2013, BCS era. Not happening this year. Heroes game. Winning team has not had more than 28 points since 2018. So we're rolling the dice a little bit by laying 6 and saying that Iowa's going to cover a 6-point spread. But for a Nebraska team that just got steamrolled by that Penn State ground attack, I think this is a bad matchup against Iowa, who has 4 losses this year by a combined 15 points. Hawks win by at least a touchdown in Lincoln. All right, let's kick it to Jim Dunaway. The Iron Bowl is, for my money, the single most fascinating matchup of the weekend, very much in the same hemisphere as Ohio State and Michigan, contrary to what one Joel Klatt said. But huge ramifications felt in the Iron Bowl, so I thought it'd be a good time to get Jim on here to talk about that and just everything that's at stake here on both sides for Alabama and Auburn. So here is Jim Dunaway. For those of you who are not watching Saturday Down South podcast on YouTube and just are audio only, now would be a good time to go on YouTube and subscribe to Saturday Down South, because we have all of our episodes are uploaded in full. If you like watching our individual game breakdowns, you're like, hey, you know what? 2-hour pod, that's really not for me. I really just kind of want to hear about my own team. That's fine. Saturday Down South on YouTube. We're going to have all of those matchup breakdowns. We do every single power conference game. We preview, we recap. That involve the SEC. So we have so much content right now on Saturday Down South on YouTube. We have YouTube exclusive videos, and sometimes we'll do interviews that are just on Saturday Down South on YouTube. So definitely go subscribe. Please do that right now. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is the next round's Jim Dunaway. Jim, I had Ryan on a few weeks ago. Scale of 1 to 10, jealousy wise, where were you at with that?
I can't remember. I think I, was Neil Armstrong of the Conor O'Gara podcast way back in the day. So, he could be Apollo 12 if he wants to be, 13 circled, whomever was the last guy to go. But I'm back again. I'm back on the O'Gara podcast again. So I'm excited to be here. But jealousy, I'm a big FOMO guy. So if somebody else is doing something, I want to be a part of it always.
I did you the solid. I come in peace. I'm wearing a shirt of your beloved Tampa Bay Rays. This is technically a Devil Rays shirt because, the old logo and whatnot. So I come in peace today. And I think that should be said at the top, because we're going to ask some tough questions here, some tough questions about Alabama. And I think you guys have probably had to address this at multiple points, odd as it sounds. But let's start with the Kalen DeBoer question here. What is a better chance of happening? Nick Saban becoming a CrossFit guy, or Kalen DeBoer taking the Penn State job?
Well, Nick Saban's a workout fiend, man.
But CrossFit's a little bit different for him.
It is. I don't think either would happen. The Kalen DeBoer I know now, I will say up front, I'm not as close with him as I was with Nick Saban or Mike Shula before that, or even Dennis Franchione, Mike DeVos, Gene Stallings. But he doesn't seem like the kind of guy to me that would take on this challenge, move his family cross country, only to cut and run after 2 years. So neither's my answer, but I would go Nick Saban CrossFit, who is always looking for another mountain to climb, than Kalen DeBoer. Now, you may know something I don't know, and I'll look idiotic here, but I think Kalen DeBoer not only wins at Auburn, gets Alabama into the SEC championship game. I personally think they win the SEC championship game. I think they get a bye in the playoffs, and then we'll see what happens after that. That's how I think Kalen DeBoer is going to stick the landing, and I think Nick Saban looks great with a kettlebell.
He probably would. I mean, who are we kidding? Who am I to doubt him? But I almost feel like this is what happened with this in any sort of association, which it feels comical to even say out loud. And I'm on record saying, like, what are we doing here? But it seems like Penn State got off the hook for tens of millions of dollars with this James Franklin buyout, with the offset that he's now going to get at Virginia Tech. And then Pat Kraft, the Penn State AD, sat down with boosters, and they basically said, so if money's not an object, who do we feel like we can go out there and get right now if there's greater than 0% chance? And they started with DeBoer, and that's what gets floated out there, that, Kalen DeBoer, just never say never. Maybe he's not happy at Bama. That just seems so insane to me. So that's the last that we could spend on that. I have seen that Kane Womack is in the discussion now for the Arkansas job. He kind of, moved past those discussions, understandably so, with his media availability this week. And then Ryan Grubb being one of the candidates linked to the Cal job that just came open with Justin Wilcox's firing over the weekend. How realistic are those two possibilities that Kalen DeBoer has to replace one of his coordinators?
Well, that's par for the course around here at Alabama. And if you're good at what you do, you end up replacing coordinators. That's something Nick Saban did on the reg through his 17 seasons here. Kane Womack was a sitting head coach when he left South Alabama to come and reunite with his old teammate from the Indiana days here in Tuscaloosa to help try to replace Nick Saban to be the next coach in line. So obviously, Kane can be a head coach. I think his defense has been a shining moment in this, and his family ties to Arkansas is tremendous. And there's only 16 head coaching jobs in the Southeastern Conference. I wouldn't leave a coordinator position for just any head coaching job, but if it's one of the ones that can compete in the SEC or the Big Ten, there's a lot of stability in those situations. And I think Arkansas, with their booster money, can win. I think they can be top half of the SEC, which makes you a playoff contender. Now, obviously, if you start doing the math, there's too many top end of the SEC programs, so somebody's going to lose every now and then, be below the halfway line, the Mendoza line there. But I really believe that Arkansas can win every now and then at an elite level, a playoff level. So why would you not take that job? And then Ryan Grubb is one of the great play callers. So good that he was in the NFL last year at Seattle. And that didn't go well, and he's back at college. But I love his schemes, and even when Alabama's offense has slipped this year, in the last few weeks, it's been not hitting open receivers or protection breaking down. There, I've been at these games and the receivers have been open. So I think Ryan Grubb is an elite schemer of offensive football, and that's the kind of guy you're going to need at Cal. So I love both of those guys for both of those jobs, whether they get them or not. That's a compliment, I think, to what Alabama has accomplished or can accomplish, and the kind of people Kalen DeBoer has on the coaching staff. So I'd put that as a high probability, but that's not going to scare anybody here because they've seen it that way for 17 years.
Let's talk about Saturday. First on the Auburn side here. It feels like we're going to see both Ashton Daniels and Deuce Knight, especially after what Deuce Knight did this past weekend against Mercer. It's ironic considering that Jackson Arnold is the guy who last year ran all over Bama, and he's the guy that could, in a two quarterback system, he's kind of the odd man out in this setting, but it wouldn't obviously, be much of a surprise at all. How should Auburn play this? If you were DJ Durkin and you had the option, knowing what you just saw from Deuce Knight, knowing what you have in that quarterback room, how should they go about this against this Kane Womack defense?
Well, I don't want to be the scoop of vanilla ice cream here on the podcast, but if Deuce Knight plays in this game, then it's going very well for Alabama.
Mm.
It's desperation time for Auburn at that point. There's no way that you go to the trouble of saving Ashton Daniels' red shirt for him not to be your guy. You're convinced he's your guy in this game. And all of a sudden, you're going to go to your third quarterback just because of what he did against Mercer, who was getting ready to go into the playoffs on the FCS level against Alabama in an Iron Bowl game. That's advantage Alabama to me if Deuce Knight's in this game because he has no seat time. And maybe he's in there because it's not going great for Ashton Daniels. So anytime you see Deuce this weekend, that's advantage Alabama, in my opinion. I thought he looked fantastic. I saw him back in the spring, and he has an unbelievable arm. You saw that he could outrun FCS guys. We'll see how it is when he plays SEC guys, but he's a tremendous athlete. But I also say, man, that's Mercer. And I'm not going to go to a Waffle House and expect my steak to taste the same when I'm at a five-star restaurant. And he was playing a Waffle House defense this past weekend. And if you get out there against a good SEC team, that great stat line can get scattered, covered, and smothered really quickly. So if Deuce is in the game, man, that's a check in Alabama's corner, in my opinion. That means something has gone wrong with Ashton, and Auburn's coaching staff's in a panic mode at that point.
If Auburn wins this game and Deuce Knight does things that are significant and the type of thing that adds to Iron Bowl lore, can you guys at the next round get the Deuces Loose trademarked? Can we work on that?
It's already been trademarked here in the state. It was David Palmer back in 1992. He wore number
Oh,
2, led Alabama to a national championship. The great Eli Gold, the deuce is loose. So that's been going. So throwing deuces, double deuce. There's deuces that can be out there. Deuce is wild. We can come up with several scenarios for T-shirts, but the deuce is loose is part of the other side of the state from Auburn in the 1992 championship season.
Do you think DJ Durkin could have a real shot at shedding the interim tag if he wins the Iron Bowl?
I believe he's in the mix to be the next head coach at Auburn. I really believe, though, it's John Summerall. And if Summerall says no, I believe DJ Durkin's the next guy. I'm
Mm.
not sure there's a plan B after Tulane's head coach, because the retention is very important for Auburn right now. Because the one thing Hugh Freeze did correctly was bring in a lot of talent. And a lot of that talent loves DJ Durkin, especially on the defensive side of the football. When you start talking the Xavier Atkins of the world, guys who could really make an impact moving forward. And they love DJ Durkin. So DJ Durkin being part of Auburn in 2026 is crucial for this roster to keep building and stacking on. Auburn had gotten so far behind when it came to their competitive roster compared to other SEC teams. They've equaled that up a little bit now. Just missing on quarterback, which has probably kept them from being a playoff contender the last couple of years. This roster is building, keeping a lot of that roster in place as much as you can in 2025 college football. Probably ties a lot to DJ Durkin, who the hire is. I think the dream scenario is John Summerall with DJ Durkin on the coaching staff. But if Summerall's out, I believe DJ Durkin is a guy who really gets a hard look, all because of that roster retention and maybe what he's shown. I don't think it has anything to do with actually beating Alabama, just how competitive he's made them look down the stretch and how much the players like him.
Hear me out, because I do think if you're DJ Durkin, you're looking at John Summerall's background, defensive minded guy, and that'd be a little bit tough for you to kind of stay on board in this day and age of college football. Another dream scenario: John Summerall as the head coach, Chip Kelly as the OC. Chip Kelly is the OC on the Plains. Now
Yeah.
that could get me excited out of bed.
Well, I mean, it would, but Chip's 8 wins at UCLA, went to win a national championship at Ohio State, and now just fired at Las Vegas. It seems like three major moves in less than 24 months. Probably takes a beat before he jumps back in and coaches college football at Auburn next year. That seems to be a bridge too far to me. And back to
Yeah.
the a defensive coordinator like DJ Durkin wanting to team up with John Summerall. I mean, Summerall not going to call his own defensive schemes. That's not the kind of guy he is. Nick Saban, Nick Saban had great defensive minds always on his coaching staff and had the utmost respect for DJ Durkin. In fact, I think DJ Durkin's at Auburn in part because of Nick Saban a little bit. I think he maybe gave Hugh Freeze a little heads up that DJ Durkin's available. You should hire this guy. And I think anybody would be smart to have DJ Durkin on the coaching staff. I think he's that good of a defensive mind. I don't think just because John Summerall is a great defensive mind, he would shy away from DJ Durkin. Just my opinion.
Yeah, and maybe I'm looking too far into kind of his history of what he's been post Maryland after all that fallout of working with only offensive minded head coaches, working with Jimbo, working with Lane Kiffin, and working obviously with Hugh Freeze. Like it's been, kind of to be able to have that total autonomy. But you're right. I mean, who knows in this day and age? And you could get creative with some of those moves. I don't think you can overstate what this game means for Kalen DeBoer. I don't really think you can. It's weird that in this era of college football and the 12-team playoff that Alabama's variance is still so wide. They're the only team left who can miss the playoff all while potentially earning a first-round bye as well. Do you get the sense that this team feels that?
I think it's become a theme in recent Iron Bowl years at Auburn is that Alabama goes into this game with a lot on the line, and Auburn has very little on the line except to win this game. Almost a little guerrilla warfare. The prize for Auburn is bowl eligibility, but that pales in comparison going to a 6-6 bowl game as opposed to knocking off your rival just for the rivalry win, but also knocking them out of the playoffs and maybe making the head coach a little bit more unstable that followed Nick Saban. So that's the big prize for Auburn in this one, and it is a wide variation, but I think that's where we are when you sign up for this schedule now in the Southeastern Conference, and it's only going to get worse in 9 games. That line between for the elite of the elites of what is successful and what is a not successful season comes down to making the playoffs, and then for some programs, once you're in the playoffs, actually doing something. I mean, let's don't forget, it's not in the SEC. It's not Alabama, the crazy Alabama fans. It's not the crazy SEC fans. Penn State fired their coach early this year after going to the semifinals last year. So this isn't just an Alabama problem or an SEC problem. This is a college football problem now. Is we want it and we want it now. And Kalen DeBoer has the "we want it now" job of this century. It's Alabama football. They want it right now. They're used to being in the playoffs with 4 teams. They were used to being in it with 2 teams, and they would find it mind-boggling if they're not in it for a second straight year in a 12-team playoff. So that's what's on the line. Yeah, it's a calm the fan base win for Alabama if he beats Auburn this weekend, and if he doesn't, it'll be just as bad as it was the weekend after Florida State. And I hate that side of college football. I really do. That you can't build on something long term now, but that's where we are. Coaches have to do it. They have to do it now, and they get paid well to do it. That's what the money's for.
To quote the great Don Draper, that's what the money's
Yep,
for. You're
that's what the
exactly right.
money's for.
Look, Jeremy Bernard might have riled some of the Iron Bowl juice up.
Yeah.
Let's say that he got things going a bit by what he said with you guys earlier this week. Maybe a little bit of bulletin board material for Auburn as well. He said, "Why can't we go in there and blow them out like we did last year?" How much did Bama Jim start sweating when he heard that?
Well, I mean, why can't they? I think if you've never played there, if you've never if you've never been through it, why do you have to mentally get into the mindset? It's like me about to hit a golf shot over water, right? I've never been in that particular part of the water on the golf course before, but there I am. I've got to hit over it. And then in my head, I start saying, man, don't hit it in the water. Don't hit it in the water. Then I hit it in the water. It's all mental. So for Jeremy Bernard to say, why can't we go in there and just blow them out like we did last year? Why can't we go play our A game? And that's what nobody talks about, right? I mean, you would agree if Alabama plays their A game and Auburn plays their A game, Alabama wins the football game. I mean,
Convincingly.
Alabama is about 7 points better on paper than Auburn is to me. So why not go? Now, blowout's an interesting choice of the word, but why not go play your best game? And those 87,000 fans and all the great pyrotechnics. I was at the Georgia game. There's no better game day atmosphere than at Auburn. It's up there with the best of the best. But you win in Neyland before, you win in Tiger Stadium if you're an Alabama football team over the years. You win at the Swamp before. That's what you got to do in the SEC. That's SEC football. Winning at night on the road is hard. There are hard places to win. There's pyrotechnics everywhere. There are more screaming fans in some places. So why not have the attitude to go in there? But if I was a coach, would I be happy he said it? No. But Auburn shut down interviews this week, right? No player availability.
Is that right?
So
I
I
didn't
mean,
know that.
let them talk, man. Let them talk, and then try to go back it up.
It's interesting because you're right. Like, these guys haven't lost at Jordan Hare. It's not as if it's something that's hanging over them. Bama hasn't lost at Jordan Hare in the 2020s. And there's not a player on that roster that knows the house of horrors that obviously you have lived and experienced in a different sort of way, and everybody in the state of Alabama. What's the key for Alabama to avoid that, to avoid those conversations, to avoid people wondering in the fourth quarter of this game, is this about to be one of those moments at Jordan Hare?
Well, I will tell you that through the history when I've been there and Auburn has won the football game, or Alabama's had to go to multiple overtimes or 4th and 31 to win it. There have been things that have happened. There have been missed field goals. Alabama's struggling at kicking right now. You get a great drive and you get into a chippy territory. Auburn stops you on 3rd down. You roll out the kicker to get an automatic 3. Well, then you miss the kick. Well, that's momentum Auburn, and the place gets a little bit more hyped up. Turnovers, always a problem anywhere you play at home. Alabama's home loss to Oklahoma because they turned the ball over. Alabama was the better football team that day. Turnovers always do it. Penalties also can be a problem. I've seen great Alabama teams go down there and either the false starts, the holding penalties, defensive pass interference, and that gets it going. Those 3 things are the things that can really get you out of whack. Special teams, the turnovers, and the penalties. And that's true at home, but especially when you're on the road in the SEC, and especially at this place where you just fuel the fire of what in reality is a 5-6 team playing the guy that they believe to be going into the season their third best quarterback. That's, talent wise, Ashton Daniels, the coaching staff that was there had him as the third best quarterback. Now he ends up being their best quarterback, and he's unlocked the great receiving core. So this is the best version of Auburn that we've seen this year, but Alabama should be the better team. So just don't fuel the fire making mistakes, mental mistakes. You go play your A game, you should be okay.
Score prediction. You already said Bama's going to win. How much are they going to win by?
I don't think I said Bama's going to win, but
I think you did.
I do feel like Alabama's going to win the game. I think it'll be, a typical Alabama Auburn type game at Jordan-Hare Stadium. If Alabama wins, the best game I saw Alabama play this year was in Athens in a hyped up nighttime atmosphere against Georgia. Just enough running game to keep everybody guessing, just enough running game to make the play action pass work. Great catches, big moments in the game, a drive right before the half, which in Alabama's big wins, they've had one for points right before the half. I would go a score like that. I'll go 24-21. Let's say we got a field goal instead of a kick here or there. I'll go 24-20 Alabama over Auburn for the win.
I like that. By the way, at this point, Ryan Grubb, Kalen DeBoer, you trust Ty Simpson on fourth down more than you trust Connor Talty, probably at this point.
Yeah, and I made a point on our show about that too, that there are, like, Nick Saban usually a by the book, almost NFL style. Let's take the points. Let's do this. And then occasionally he'd kick an onside kick in the national championship game to steal possession. But he's usually a by the book guy. This coaching staff, back to Washington and before that, but even at Alabama, very comfortable going for it 4th and 3, 4th and 5, 4th and 7, just about anywhere on the field. And so if you do have kicking problems and in a situation on Saturday where you would have to or decide to go for it on fourth down, I think this coaching staff, this offensive team, very comfortable going for it on a 4th and 3, 4th and 5, because they've done it a lot and they do it a lot in practice. So yeah, they're comfortable doing that and would not be shocked to see them roll out the kicker only when they have to.
Last one for you. It's not even a question. It's just a request. And logistics, it's a bit tough to work this out, but you guys could find a way. I know you can. Take Joel Klatt to his first SEC football game.
Yeah.
That's all I ask.
I really believe I believe somewhere down the road he will be one of the lead analysts on the Southeastern Conference. Somewhere down the road, I believe that. However the contracts work out, Joel has Ohio State, Michigan. I mean, you're a Big Ten guy. It's a big game. I watched it as a kid all the time. Never been to one, but
it's huge.
But the SEC is must see television for a reason, and part of it's what we're going to see at Jordan-Hare Stadium. It's the atmosphere. It's the backup dancers that are the fans. It is the orchestra that is the pyrotechnics and the music inside the stadium. It's the chaos. It's the drunkenness. It's the food. And not that they don't have all of that in the Big Ten or the ACC or the Big 12, but I don't think they have it to the volume they have it in the SEC. And that's what makes Saturday night so special this week.
To say it's not in the same hemisphere. Buddy, okay.
Yeah.
Not going to be my take. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but just found that to be interesting. Jim, you are the best. You guys are the best. Hope you guys have hopefully a restful time coming up. This is a busy time of year for you guys, man. Get some rest.
Well, thank you. We're very thankful for your friendship. I know that as we get ready for Thanksgiving. You've been such a blessing to us, and we always enjoy your work.
Thanks, man. That means a lot. Before we get to the rest of the podcast, I want to talk to you guys about Kalshi. This is something that is blowing up right now. Maybe you've seen people reference Kalshi in relation to a lot of different things that are going on in the world. And basically, this is a place where you can make money off of predictions. What do we do on these preview pods? We predict things. We tell you, hey, this is how you would bet here. This is how you would bet there. This isn't betting. This is sports trading. This is the ability to make predictions and say, hey, I can make money off of that. If you go to Kalshi right now, you can see that they have markets for a variety of different things. You can predict who's going to be the next head coach at UNC or Penn State or these different things that there are markets for. And the cool thing about this, all 50 states you can do this in. They are legal at the federal level. It's not a state-by-state deal. And so Kalshi has just a wide variety of things that you can make picks on, make predictions on, and win money. It's a really, really cool source to be able to kind of flex some of those prediction muscles. I know all of you listening to this, you guys can see into the crystal ball. So use the promo code SDS, get signed up today, and make yourself some money on Kalshi. Lad of the week, Harrison Mevis. Thicker kicker, Money Mevis, friend of the show. Got signed by the Rams a few weeks ago. He was just doing extra points for them, but got the call up to kind of be the full-time kicker, solve their kicking woes on Sunday Night Football. He made his first 2 career field goals in the NFL, 40-yarder and then a 52-yarder, drilled them both, never any doubt. Love to see it. Second heaviest kicker in NFL history at 243 pounds, Sebastian Janikowski, the only kicker in NFL history heavier than one Harrison Mevis. But I love me some Harrison Mevis. For those who have been listening to this show for several years, you know that to be the case. And we had him on the show twice. I think it was both during 22, I want to say. And I really don't have a ton of players on the show just because I think more times than not, just usually not the best interviews, but I wanted to have him on a second time just because I just think he's just such a nice, easygoing, down-to-earth Indiana kid. Yes, originally from Indiana. Also probably doesn't get enough credit for making the 61-yard kick against Kansas State after Mizzou took that inexplicable delay of game penalty. And he makes this kick, and it's kind of the you could really point to that and say it was the turning point of the Drinkowitz era at Mizzou when that happened in 23. And instead of that being a game that Mizzou loses at home with this just terrible penalty late, and who knows what happens to that team, which was still talented, but instead Mevis just kind of gives them this unbelievable like walk-off winner. And he's just been a fun story to watch. He's kind of had sort of a typical kicker journey to get to this point. And I remember when I lived in Nebraska, Brett Maher, who was the Cowboys kicker for all those years, he was undrafted and did the practice squad thing, CFL. He went to Kearney High, and I worked at the Kearney Hub. And so sometimes like I'd be at Kearney High and, covering an event or something like that. And he would just be over on the football field getting kicks up while he was between teams or something like that, or maybe he's home on break or whatever it was. And that's for someone who spent a decade in the NFL and was, playing into his mid 30s. So it's just a grind for kickers. I mean, there's only 32 of those jobs that are like actually available. And then everybody else is just kind of practice squad, CFL, and, you have 1 or 2 bad weeks, and that's kind of all she wrote. So Mevis is in a really similar spot, and I root for that guy. I really do. And, hope that after he's gone through this journey of being like undrafted, UFL, and a couple of practice squads, I hope that he's able to hang on with the Rams. And, go figure, he's now doing this for the team that's become the Super Bowl favorites. So the thought of being able to watch playoff games and Harrison Mevis is lining up a big time kick, that just kind of makes me excited and makes me proud to watch him do what he's doing. So I'm going to root for him to make every single kick, unless of course it's against the Bears in the playoffs. All right, that'll do it. Rivalry week. Cannot wait. Hope that this provided you some entertainment on a long drive, maybe, or, you're getting ready Black Friday or something like that. But appreciate you listening to us all season, all regular season. It's kind of crazy to think this was the last regular season preview pod that we're doing. Leave us a 5-star review if you haven't done so. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at Sat Down South, at CJ O'Gara, at Go Smart. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.